My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Michael O'Brien is an executive coach, professional speaker, and author of the book Shift, available on Amazon and other book-selling platforms. In 2001, Michael was involved in a head-on bicycle collision with an SUV that almost took his life. If he survived the crash, he promised himself that he would dedicate his life to helping others accomplish all their goals and dreams. Michael has one of the most inspiring life stories I have ever heard, and I am very excited to share his journey with you today on the podcast. Please welcome Michael O'Brien. Today on the Expect Miracles podcast, we have Michael O'Brien. Michael O'Brien's got a great story. I'm very excited to sit down and talk with him. Michael, how are you doing today?
Oh, great, Dr. Kevin. Thanks for having me. To the listeners out there, hello. Thanks for the shout out for my story, but I love your story. It's a pretty damn good one. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm glad two Jersey guys are chatting today.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this episode. So, Michael, where are you from originally?
Originally, upstate New York, Rochester. A good town to grow up in. Also a good town to leave, to go away for college because I was sick of the winters. And I went to school in Virginia and then ended up being in D.C. after school.
Nice. I went to college down in Washington, D.C.
Oh, where? Oh, you went to Catholic
University. Yeah. Did you go to the University of Virginia?
No, I went to James Madison.
Oh, that's a good one. I've been there.
Yeah.
That's a great school.
Yeah, beautiful part of the state, right there, nestled in the Shenandoah Valley. And then kids, after they graduate, they go to Richmond or
absolutely
go to DC. And I was like, well, I'm going to go to DC and get my first gig. And I know Catholic University well because my first job as a representative sales rep, Catholic University was in my territory.
Nice.
Occasionally I'd go to campus and just try to find some prayer that would hit my quota.
That's funny. So, Michael, what were you interested after you graduated? What did you want to get into?
Well, so coming out of school, I wanted to marry what my mom did and what my dad did. So my mom was a nurse and my dad was in sales. So I thought when I first began college, I thought I wanted to be an ophthalmologist. And then I was like, I don't know if I want to go to school that long. Like I didn't necessarily have a whole love affair with school, right? I did okay, but I certainly, looking back, I didn't apply myself like I could have.
Absolutely.
But I really wanted to do something that was going to make a meaningful difference in the world. So if I was going to sell something, I wanted to sell something that made a contribution. And I saw my mom's job as like, wow, that made a huge contribution. So I married the two. I really wanted to get into pharmaceutical sales right off the rip, right out of college. But they said, you know what? You don't have any sales experience. So go, young lad, and go get some experience. And that's why I moved up to DC. I got a job selling copiers and facsimiles.
Wow.
Like the boot camp.
Yeah, getting you ready.
Sales. Now, I just said I wanted to sell something that I thought was making a meaningful contribution to society. And it's hard to say that a copier really was doing that.
Well, I'm kind of glad you brought that up too, because everybody's got to start somewhere. And there are people that will refuse to start wherever they get an opportunity. And it's like they want to be at that top level, but you're not just going to jump right there. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you have to start the first rung of the ladder. And I knew I needed to do that. It was a tough gig. It was during one of our recessions of the 90s. And I had Capitol Hill. I learned a ton in that job. So I had a lot of gratitude for the fact that I had the job. I also had a lot of gratitude the moment I could leave the job because
absolutely. Yeah.
I learned a lot about financial management, managing my own money, all of it. Right. So, but yeah, I think you're right, Dr. Kevin. Like you got to start somewhere and most people don't start.
Absolutely. It's a huge problem.
Huge problem.
So what was after that stepping stone of the copiers and printers? Where'd you go after that?
Then I had a vision that I wanted to execute on, and that was to get into pharmaceutical sales. So eventually I got my first gig, and it was with a small company. They gave me a shot and I worked my tail off. And so I did that with them for about 4 years. And I also realized one of my first professional setbacks, and just in the whole spirit of developing resilience. So I was downsized, and this was in 1996. And I was shocked. I was part of a special division. I thought we were totally protected. I was like, they won't do this to us, because the leadership is all telling us everything that we want to hear. And I felt secure.
Yeah.
Because we want security as people. And then when the news came, it was a total, I was blindsided. And I was angry at first. And then from there, I knew this. I had to start diversifying my experience, diversifying my resume, my skill set, if I was going to have long-term career success.
Yeah.
And in the moment, again, all these hiccups in life that we all experience, they can be beautiful lessons.
Oh, absolutely.
And although I was irritated and frustrated and angry at first, I turned that into another valuable lesson in terms of building one's life, is try to diversify and have some agility in how you approach life.
Yeah. Just a little speed bump there and you picked everything up and you kept going.
You bet. We all go through them. They're not easy, but they will define us. And there's a good Viktor Frankl quote around, hey, your events in your life do not define who you are. It's how you respond to them. In so many words or less. I didn't get it perfect. Yeah. But it's that essence that how we respond to things, that's really going to dictate what type of life, what type of career we're going to have.
Yeah, that's the only thing we can control. We can't control really what happens. It's how you respond to what happens.
You better believe it. Yep.
Definitely. So what was next for you?
So then I left that company because I got downsized. I joined another company. And then 3 months into that, I got a call from this company that was coming over from Japan. They had this innovative drug for Alzheimer's disease. Some of your listeners may know it as Aricept. And I was like, well, I'm part of this big, huge company. I felt like a little bit of a social security number within the company. Mm-hmm. I didn't really have my identity yet because I'd only been there a few months. Mm-hmm. So I figured at our age, the age I was at, recently married, I was going to take a shot. I was like, well, this is a startup, could be a really great thing. And they came over, the drug got approved, and the rest of it is sort of history. I spent 18 years there.
Wow.
Until I started my own firm. And I moved my career up, over, sideways, up and down, going back to that lesson I learned. Got to diversify your resume, Michael, diversify your experience. So I took that mentality or that approach into that particular company.
Nice. And so you probably hit the biggest roadblock of your life eventually, and I'm very excited to get into that. So what exactly happened? When was it? Where was it? And how did you end up in that situation?
Yeah, so definitely the biggest roadblock. There's no doubt about that, Kevin. So July 11th, 2001, I call it my last bad day. I have not had a bad day since. On July 11th, 2001, I was out in New Mexico, north of Albuquerque, south of Santa Fe. We were in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Again, July 11th. So we got a really great deal on the hotel because it was off season. And we were there for a typical meeting, arrive on Monday, depart on Friday. Guys and gals could golf or do spa on Thursday. Again, it was 2001, different time back then than it is current day here in 2018. So I decided I was going to bring my bike out because I was an avid cyclist since high school, raced all the way through high school and college. And I wanted to get back into racing. Our youngest daughter had been born about 7 months earlier. And I took a little bit of break from cycling when I graduated college and I moved to DC. So I was like, I'm going to get back into it. So I brought my travel bike out and I found a little loop in the hotel out the back service road and up the main entrance. It was about a 2-mile loop. Mm-hmm. And I thought this is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
By design, I could ride my bike in New Mexico, cross that state off the states I've ridden my bike in because I have a goal of riding in every one of the states. And I thought, hey, maybe I can avoid the hotel gym before we have to sit through hours of PowerPoint all day long.
Right.
And on that Wednesday, I came around a bend. It was the fourth lap. Came around a bend in this massive SUV, white SUV, Ford Explorer at the time, had crossed into my lane, was traveling about 40 miles an hour and hit me head on.
At you?
coming at me. He was fully in my lane. So
40 miles an hour?
yeah, that's what they predict. So the speed limit was 25.
Uh-huh.
I was going probably, let's call it 18, 19, 20 miles an hour. I'm not exactly sure, but I felt like around that pace. And based on the impact, the skid marks, and where my Ironman watch flew off my left wrist, broke off and flew like 250 feet the other way.
Jesus.
They estimated that based on the impact and the skid marks, he was going right around 40.
Wow.
He had crossed sort of this apex in the bend, and he was fully in my lane. I had nowhere to go. It was so surreal.
How much time did you have to react? Was it
not enough.
Yeah.
So, it was one of those things, Kevin. It was like, I came around, I'm like, wow, he's in my lane. Wow.
Right. You're seeing it all happen and you're just like not computing. Yeah.
And it's starting to go, we're starting to get into slow-mo. And I'm like, well, certainly he's going to move. Certainly he's going to move. Certainly, he's not going to move.
Oh, man.
And I just could not, and all that happened within 5 seconds, right? I just couldn't move fast enough. I almost missed him. If I had maybe another 15 feet, maybe.
Yeah.
But I remember everything that morning. The sound of me hitting his grill into the windshield. I went, the screech of his brakes, and then the thud I made as I came off his hood onto the asphalt below. That knocked me unconscious, as your listeners would imagine. And then when I woke up, when I regained consciousness, all the EMTs were around me doing their work.
On the road still?
On the road. I couldn't move.
Oh.
The thought of moving was painful. And I knew I was I could feel I was in a world of hurt, but I could see body language and facial expressions. They were really concerned.
What's your first initial reaction waking up, seeing EMTs? What goes through your mind at that point?
Well, that was like the WTF moment of the morning. It was like, whoa, like what happened? I had memory of like the SUV hitting me. And so what I tend to do is I use humor to cut the tension. And there was a whole bunch of tension. So then I asked the EMTs, like, hey, how's my bike? And so they looked at me, and that's really only a question probably another cyclist can really appreciate. We're like, we get all scarred up and cut up. We care about our bikes.
Absolutely, yeah.
But they didn't really laugh at that. So they were probably worried. I had a TBI. But I just remember in that moment willing myself not to fall asleep. I felt if I fell asleep, I would lose control over the situation, as crazy as that sounds now. So I just said, hey, whatever you do, Michael, stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. And back then, as a young professional, and I thought I had to be Superman at work. I thought I had to be Superman at home too. I did a good job of trying to control everything. And I did a really great job of pouring all of my stress inside of me. So I thought in that moment, again, as crazy as it sounds, if I can stay awake, I can control this. And then they told me, hey, we got to call the medevac to bring you to Albuquerque. That was the only Trauma 1 center in the state at the University of New Mexico. And then I tried to rationalize or argue my way out of the helicopter trip. I was like, really? Because back then, I'd never been on a helicopter and I was scared of flying.
Yeah.
I go, really? Do we have to do that? And they're like, listen, you have to get you there. The ambulance ride would be 45 minutes at best. We need to get you on that helicopter. And I remember as I got pushed up onto the helicopter, I promised myself, if I live, life would be different. I would stop chasing happiness. I knew my life was in balance. I didn't know the extent of my injuries, but what I later learned is I broke a whole bunch of everything, both legs, shoulders. I had glass all through me because I went into the windshield. Ooh. But my left femur, it shattered. And when it shattered, besides just breaking off the skin, it lacerated the femoral artery.
Oh, man.
So the doctors told my wife after my first surgery that lasted about 10 to 12 hours and I needed about 34 units of blood product. They said, hey, had Michael been 10 years older or not in shape at the time, he would have passed away before he got to the hospital.
Jeez.
So why I'm living, right? So it's sort of like you live for a reason.
Yeah.
Because most people would have died that way.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up because I was thinking about this last week. I didn't have that type of injury that you had, but I was in a similar situation with just the hopelessness and just 2 years of every day being in the worst day of your life. And I remember thinking to myself, if I ever get out of this, I am going to live my life completely different. I'm going to do it right. And yeah, I'm not going to just chase whatever's going on. I'm going to do it right and make a difference. And that's great that you brought that up.
Yeah, well, part of your story, Kevin, like really resonated with me, that hope, the darkness piece. Because,
Yeah.
After that first surgery, I spent multiple days in the ICU. And then I came out of the ICU and the doctor started telling me about the extent of my injuries. The driver had a revoked license. They told me, hey, your life is going to be, it was almost like that first doctor said, hey, you're going to have to live with it. They basically shared with me like, hey, you're going to have a life of dependency. You're going to have a life of limitations, life of more surgeries. And so I listened to all this and I was like, oh my God, my life is over. Like my identity as a man, as a human has been tossed upside down and shaken violently. And now who am I? And all I saw was what I couldn't do and didn't have anymore. And I got really dark really quickly. I was frustrated, angered, bitter, revengeful. I wanted to get back at the driver. And I tried to put on a smiley face to all my visitors, but deep down inside, when the hospital went dark at night and the visiting hours were over, I would just, if I could fall asleep, I would cry myself to sleep. Yeah. And I just wondered, like, why did this happen to me? Like, this is so unfair.
Right.
And I stayed dark for a while. And sort of in the spirit that we go where our eyes go, I continued just to see all of my limitations, which then validated my whole victim story of like, oh, pity me.
Yeah.
And a lot of people validated it because something horrific happened.
Absolutely,
and it not only impacted me, but it impacted my whole family.
Yep, definitely. And so what was the recovery process like for you?
Well, in the beginning, it was really brutal. So they did this procedure to cut fasciotomies in my left leg just to allow my body to expand because I had all the blood that I lost had to be replaced and plasma and the whole thing. So for the first several weeks, I was treated as a burn victim because I had these open wounds that were just like crazy. It was just nuts. And it was, a very painful process. And I had this tug of war even back then in 2001 of like not wanting to be on pain meds. I was really concerned about, I don't want them to be a crutch, right? So, but I was sitting in a whole bunch of pain, just moving in the hospital bed was painful. And I couldn't put full weight on my legs for quite some time. So when I finally was able to move out of the bed into a wheelchair, that gave me at least some mobility. But I was dependent upon people to do almost everything for me. And probably one of the lowest moments from a dignity point of view was I couldn't even use the bathroom by myself. When you're a baby, everyone's like, goes goo goo gaga over you, like when you change your diaper. But now here I am, a man, a father, a husband in his early 30s, and I have to ask for the bedpan and I have to ask someone to clean me up.
Yeah.
And from a low moment, those moments were from a dignity point of view, like, is this what my life is going to be? Where I have to like ask someone to clean me.
Yeah.
Right? It was in some ways very easy to be anger and frustrated and dark.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So those initial phases were really hard. And then they flew me back home here to New Jersey and I went to the Kessler Institute of Rehabilitation. Well, before that, I was at Hackensack. And at Kessler, much like you saw that sign, expect miracles.
Yeah.
When I came into Kessler, I saw a sign. It was motivating the challenge and challenge the motivated.
Wow.
And I was like, even saying it to you now, I got a little goosebumpy rush. But I was like, all right, okay. The fog started to lift a little bit. I was like, okay, I like that mantra. And it wasn't a light switch. So I had some difficult moments when I first came into Kessler, but there was a moment during one of my rehab sessions when I just looked around the room and I noticed that some people were getting better and some people weren't. And I concluded that it was all about mindset.
I think you're very, very right about that.
It was like, who was looking at life through a lens of abundance, despite their injuries, despite what they were going through? And who was looking at life through a lens of scarcity or loss? And hey, raise my hand. That's how I was up until that moment. And then I made a commitment, like, you're going to be the best you can be.
Yeah.
The best husband, father, leader, person. You got to get your butt in gear and you got to shift your mindset.
Absolutely. You seem like a quote guy. I just want to throw this one out there by Oscar Wilde. He says, two men look out a window, one sees mud and one sees the stars.
Yes, exactly. So in that moment, I made a commitment that I was going to show up differently and show up fully, because I was showing up in a half-ass way. And it was more of like, okay, you got to show up full ass tomorrow. We're going to work really hard today to create a better tomorrow. Work really hard that day, create a better tomorrow. And I was committed to putting July 11th, 2001 as my last bad day. Mm-hmm. And so the next morning, I started with a new routine. I started to weave in gratitude into my life. Now, keep in mind, 2001, we didn't know about gratitude.
Yeah.
We didn't know about vulnerability. We didn't know about a lot of these things. But what I knew just in my heart and maybe in my head is that if I could start just being grateful for what I had, I could shift my perspective, because I had spent all this time up until then looking at all the things I didn't have. Mm-hmm. And it was, again, not a light switch. It wasn't like, oh, there's dark and now there's light. It was almost like a dimmer switch. It's like, okay, this day got a little bit better than yesterday.
I think that's exactly how the healing process goes too. It's very rare where you flick the light switch on fully. It's usually just a little brighter every day. Every day.
And you string together like 7 days of a little brighter.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, wow, it's pretty bright. And then you do it again the next week, and you do it again the next week.
And then sometimes it gets a little dim again.
Yeah. And I had people read in my book, I had moments where it went dark again. I had moments where I was in a surgery. The knee became infected. I had to go back in for emergency surgery. They had to irrigate the whole knee. I had to get a PICC line, an IV PICC line in my chest for IVs. That's how bad the infection was. And I was sort of, up until that moment before the first surgery, I was sort of peaking, like my riding was coming back. I was thinking about racing again. And then all of a sudden it was like, boom, go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect your $200.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why does this stuff always seem to happen? And the whole thing of like, why do bad things happen to good people? Mm-hmm. And that was, again, another challenging moment, but another opportunity to demonstrate some resilience.
Beautiful. Yeah. So you're recovering then, and what happened after that?
So I decided, I recovered from that, and then I was like, I'm going to get back into bike racing, because that was the big something I wanted to do. And so keep in mind, it was 2001. Now fast forward to 2007, 2008, and I did my first ride back, and I did it not because I thought I was going to win the race. I still race today, now 2018.
How are you physically at this point? How's everything feeling? How does your body feel like 6 or 7 years after the injury?
Well, so now it's like 17. So
not now, but when you said you were like, I could only imagine your family's face when you're like, all right, I'm going to start racing again.
Well, there's so many people that would ask my wife, how do you let him get back on the bike?
Yeah.
And she's like, the bike is part of who he is. And there's risk in life, and there's risk in sitting on the couch all day looking at the television. So he's going to live his life fully, and this is part of it. So does she get nervous when I go out riding? Yeah, absolutely. Probably. But it's all part of the package, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say then in 2007, 2008, 6, 7 years post-accident, I was starting to feel stronger. Definitely, I have limitations. Like there are things I no longer can do. Like I can't run anymore. I did the Boston Marathon when I was younger.
Yeah.
The Marine Corps Marathon. So those days are over. Right. My left leg is shorter than my right, and the extension and flexion are nowhere near normal, but I have just enough to ride my bike. Mm-hmm. So when I ride, I love to joke with the other guys around me. I'm like, I really have like 1.8 legs and you have 2. So you should be so much further ahead of me. So it's like my way of talking trash. Because, and again, I pin a number on as a testament to what we can do with the right mindset, a little resilience, and the right type of community, which I call my Peloton, behind me, because I'm here today talking to you and riding my bike still and doing all the things that I enjoy in life, it's not because it's just me. Like, it's my wife, it's my daughters, our friends. We had so many people come to our side, to our aid. There's no way I would be here today without their help all those years ago.
Absolutely. So, Michael, what did you get into because of this accident? What are you doing now?
Well, so what people will learn as they read the story. So there was a seed that was planted when I was in the ICU. So the ICU experience is sort of funny. I was all drugged up and I had lived a really clean life up until that point. So I got some powerful drugs. So I don't remember, Kevin, any of this, right? So I interviewed my wife for a job, right, to be one of my sales reps on my team.
Mm-hmm.
I told her to buy Amazon stock. So keep in mind, in 2001, Amazon stock was $15 a share.
Yeah.
We didn't buy Amazon stock and I didn't hire her, but we have forgiven each other for those like faux pas. But I also mentioned this guy's name, and he happened to be, his name's David Kolb. And he's a guy, the first guy I met who is an executive coach.
Okay.
And when my wife asked me, like, who's David? I was like, well, why are you asking me about this? And she goes, well, he kept on mumbling his name. So I knew if I was mumbling anybody's name, there must have been a reason behind that.
Did you know him?
Yeah. So I had hired him to be our team executive coach about 6 months prior. So keep in mind, I wasn't like referencing my mom or my dad or some best friends. It was like David Kolb. And I was like, whoa, what's up with that? But I knew like a seed was planted that one day I would follow in his footsteps. It took 13 years of watering that seed, a little fertilizer, a little tilling of the soil.
That just gave me like goosebumps a little bit. How all the people in the world's name you could have mumbled or could have thought of, and you weren't even really conscious of it. You came out with his name. Like
it's freaky, right?
That's wild.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And because she had written it all down, I kept on saying, well, find David. He's our leader. And
That's
I'm like,
powerful stuff.
So I knew, like, I had come up with my company, the type of people I wanted to do executive coaching for when I was in the hospital. So for those that don't know, a Peloton is a group of cyclists in a bike race. And I believe it's my metaphor for tribes at work, because teams at work need leadership and trust and collaboration and communication, just the same as those cyclists in a Peloton riding in the Tour de France, right? They need trust and communication and all that jazz. So I had come up with the whole concept. But when I came back to work, the one thing I did is I came back to work on my own terms. I stopped chasing the happiness. I was just trying to be. And I was going to show up at work, again, on my own terms and try to be really purposeful to the values I wanted to honor. So I knew as I started going through this path, as I came back to work, that eventually I would leave to follow in David's footsteps, open my own coaching firm. And I had all the parameters set. As soon as I saw that I couldn't honor my values at that place of employment, I would leave.
That's good stuff.
And so when that happened, I was able to make that call within 36 hours.
To quit?
To basically say, raise my hand. I said, hey, 18 years, it's been a good run. Where the company is going, because it was about to go through another change, where it wants to go, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean they were going in a place that was wrong and I was right. It just meant that they were going somewhere where I just didn't want to go. And we could all be good with that. And we could depart and be grateful for each other and grateful for 18 years. I knew it was time to do my higher calling, my higher purpose and passion. So when that all happened, I made a quick decision. A lot of people are like, you're making this decision so rashly. So it's like so quick. I said, actually not. I've been making this decision for the last 13 years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I just been building my experience. So I knew I was going to be an executive coach. And I was working my career. And eventually I got to the executive suite. And I think I got there because of how I changed my approach. If I didn't change my approach, I probably would have never gotten there. But all those experiences from where I was prior to the accident to then leaving as an executive, those were all fundamental to help me be a better business leader.
Absolutely.
When I opened my own firm up.
And in that situation, you can't sit on that decision too long because your brain will talk you out of it. So it's almost like you have to be like, all right, this is it. Let's do it.
Yeah, it was like pull the Band-Aid off and you just got to go, right? So again, going
Absolutely.
back to sort of the beginning of our conversation, so many people let the start stop them.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to my wife. I said, let's do it. Here's our time. This is as good a time as any. And I made that call to the appropriate people in the company to say, hey, let's talk about me leaving. Because I was in a really big role. So it wasn't like a typical employee where I
Absolutely.
could just say, hey, here's my 2 weeks notice. We really did have to work through some type of transition plan.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I made that within 36 hours. I was like, this is no longer a good fit for me.
Yeah.
And I was cool with where they wanted to go. I was also cool with where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And so what was the next transition phase in your life?
Well, then it was building my practice, Peloton coaching and consulting. And now I get to do something I love doing all the time is helping leaders grow and develop. But really what I want to help them do is avoid their SUV.
Yeah.
Because I know there's so many people in all the cities across America. We see it in our area here, Kevin, like in New York and New Jersey. A lot of people have a really great career. They have all their stuff.
Stuff is right. Yes,
They
they
have
do.
a ton of stuff. And so, by one definition, they're really wealthy,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not wealthy within. They got
Absolutely.
stress, they got the worry, they got the anxiety, they got the shame. They don't have the happiness and joy and
Or
fulfillment,
peace of mind. Yeah.
peace of mind. And the thing is, I was a lot like that before my accident, before my last bad day. So I can feel where they're at right now.
Absolutely.
And what I really want to help them do is have that great career, but also have that greatness, that wealth inside of them.
Yeah.
So they don't pour the stress inside. Because if you keep on pouring, you know this through your work, if you're pouring stress inside of your body, then your alignment's all off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that energy has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And if we don't do anything with it, that energy stays as pain and suffering, or in my case, literally and figuratively, that
Mm-hmm.
SUV knocked the stuffing out of me, knocked
Mm-hmm.
all that energy out. So now I try to help leaders lead in their own way, bring their full selves to work, have a great career, climb that corporate ladder if they want to, but
Yeah.
also have wealth inside. So that's what I do
That's huge.
now. And then I speak on my accident and my recovery and the lessons I've learned along the way. And I try to translate it for those people in corporations in a very relatable way.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful thing too, because it's part of you. What you're doing is what you do. You've lived it. And what I do, I can help people get coached through like a traumatic brain injury and very serious life stuff because I've been there, and it helps reassure them that they're in the right spot and they will get better because they have seen where I've been and where I'm at now. And I'm looking at you right now. If I just came up to you on the street, I would have no idea. You look like you're in shape. You're looking good. You have overcome some very severe obstacles, and it's very impressive to see. It's a very inspiring story.
Well, you know, your audience members can't see us, but, you know, I look like Brad Pitt, as you can tell. No, but, you know, but yeah, that's the thing. Like when people first meet me, they're like, you're normal.
Yeah.
And then I start to show the pictures and what happened, and they leaf through the book. We talk and they see my scars because my legs
Absolutely.
are filled with scars.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, dang,
Yeah.
you got nailed. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're lucky to be alive. I'm like, yeah, that's what I just said. Right. So,
Yeah.
you know, so when you first look at me, if you saw me do a talk, they're like, yeah, okay. He's the guy that I see online at Whole Foods, right? He's like
Yeah.
the white dude in the suburbia in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I try to relay to folks. I don't try to give them, hey, the definition of success is climbing Mount Everest or doing Ironman. And
Yeah.
I think those are really awesome feats. And I know people who've done Ironman. I don't know anyone that's done Everest. But I try to say, hey, listen, let's stop the comparison and just become the best you can be, right?
Absolutely.
Just live that life.
Yeah.
And I want to give you a roadmap to do it based on my own personal experience, because I believe there are more people out there that just want to be really great husbands and really great dads. There are more people like that than want to climb Mount Everest or do an Ironman. And I think
Absolutely.
in today's society, we need more good dads and good moms and good husbands and good wives so much more now just to help our society grow and hopefully the way we want it to grow.
Absolutely. I like to ask this question to my guests. If there's one piece of advice you could gift the audience with that you've carried with over the years that's really resonated with you, what would it be? It could be absolutely anything.
Yeah, I'd say breathe.
Ooh.
I would say this. So that back in the day, back in 2001, I didn't know anything about meditation or mindfulness. Meditation was something that people who ate grape nuts did, right? So it was like very California woo-woo thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that your listeners should just run out and do a meditation practice, but I am saying like connect with your breath. It's the first thing we get when we come into the world. We leave with that. Everything else in our lives change, but we always can be connected to our breath. And when we have greater control over our breath, when we can slow it down, and in some ways we can go faster. It slows everything down so we can be thoughtful and mindful. And instead of just being triggered and reacting, we can be a little bit more thoughtful and responsive.
Absolutely.
So when I was coming out of my recovery, I developed a little micro mindfulness. I didn't call it that back then because I didn't have the vocabulary, but it's called grabbing a PBR, which does not stand for Pabst Blue Ribbon because life's too short to drink bad beer, regardless of all those people in Brooklyn, what they have to say about this stuff. It stands for pause, breathe, and reflect. And when we have moments where we feel like we're getting triggered, what I invite people to do is just like hit the pause button, spend a minute or two just connecting with their breath. As simple as like breathe in, hold for 4, breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 2, exhale for a count of 4, hold for 2. And just do that for a minute or two, and then have a moment of reflection in terms of like, well, what do I want to do next?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because so often we just sort of go on with our days like we're on autopilot.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really important to note that we're not responsible for the first thought that pops into our head, but we are responsible for our second thought and that first action. And the more we can have that pause be part of our life, we can be really, we're just really mindful or thoughtful and purposeful about what that second thought is and what that first action is.
Absolutely. And I think what you just mentioned, being able to reflect and spending time with yourself is a very powerful thing. And me and you kind of experienced that by default. There was so many nights where I was just staring up at the ceiling, like, what the hell is going on here? And you just start running through everything and you really start to work stuff out. You find out what's important, what's not. And it's an unfortunate circumstance, but look where it's led you. And it's just powerful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I think both of our experiences, we've learned a lot about ourselves through it. We've learned a lot about others. And now we're in a position to help others.
Absolutely.
Hopefully relay that wisdom that we've learned through our pain and suffering so they can avoid some on their own. And that's one of the greatest gifts of this. And a lot of people have asked me like, hey, if you could turn back time, would you want this to just go away?
No way.
And I'm like, no way. I'm like, this has totally shaped me. There's no book. There's no business. There's none of that without the experience I went through. And as a family, we're closer together. I see myself in a completely different light. And hopefully I can share a pearl or two with people so they can also live a life that is really wealthy. And
absolutely. And you're doing it, Michael. You're doing it.
Trying every day, pedal stroke by pedal stroke.
There we go. And so, Michael, where can people find you on the internet? What's your company called and everything like that?
Yeah. So the company's called Peloton Coaching and Consulting. And you can find me at michaelobrienshift.com. And then you can find me on all those other places like Facebook and LinkedIn, and just type in Peloton Coaching or Shift. And that usually connects you with the right Michael O'Brien, because there's a ton of us out there.
Yeah. And what's your book called, by the way?
It's called Shift, SHIFT, Creating Better Tomorrows. And the really cool thing, Kevin, about the book is that all the proceeds go to a charity called World Bicycle Relief. They're based in Chicago, and they help girls in countries like Kenya and Malawi and Zambia conquer the challenge of distance by giving them a bike. They give them mobility. And since I lost my mobility in my accident, And the book was really about not making money, but about the message of mindset and resilience and community. I really wanted to give the proceeds to an organization that helped basically promote mobility.
Mm-hmm.
And
Beautiful.
It's a great organization. When those girls get their bikes, they get to stay in school longer. They graduate later. They have more independence. It also helps them to get to the marketplace as well as to healthcare. And we all know here in the Western part of the world, like our first bike and what it meant and how excited we are. So WBR, World Bicycle Relief, comes into their village and, at the age of 10, 11, they give them a bike and it totally changes their life.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and it's such a great organization, and it sort of ties nicely to my whole experience. So when people buy a copy of Shift, know this, that someone halfway around the world, their life is changing because you bought a copy of it. And hopefully by reading it, they also get a little bit of a shift in their life too.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I really love this episode and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, everyone. Enjoyed spending the time with you, man.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast and spread the good word. My chiropractic practice is located in West Orange, New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. You can also find us on Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. All of my information is on my website at drkevinpecca.com, drkevinpecca.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca for podcast episodes, patient testimonials, and educational videos. I have daily affirmations and inspirational quotes on Instagram at Easel Affirmations, EASEL Affirmations. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at drkevinpecca@gmail.com, drkevinpecca@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Cheers.